The night sky over western Russia glowed orange long before anyone understood why. Firefighters were still racing through empty country roads when the first videos emerged. An underground gas pipeline exploding in a column of flame so tall it lit entire fields like daylight. And for a moment, it looked like the war had arrived deep inside Russia. But the truth was even worse. It was another sign that the Russian system itself is breaking down. Because at the same time that fire erupted, new numbers were released. Numbers so shocking that even Kremlin propagandists struggled to explain them. Russia has now suffered over 1,160,000 personnel losses, more than 1 million soldiers gone. And the only thing more frightening than the number itself is the speed at which it continues to grow. Almost 1,000 new losses in just the last few days. And these are only the confirmed figures. They don't include the wounded, the permanently disabled, or the soldiers written off as missing. When you add those, the number of active Russian combat troops shrinks even further. The Kremlin is running out of bodies, and it's running out of machines too. Tanks, armored vehicles, artillery. What remains on the battlefield is no longer an army designed for modern war. It's a scrapyard on wheels. Most of the so-called new reinforcements are cannibalized from old Soviet hulls pulled out of storage, rusted, broken, and often older than the soldiers told to drive them. This is the reality Moscow never wanted the world to see. But if you look past the propaganda, you will find a simple truth. Russia is no longer fighting with strength. It is fighting with leftovers. And that brings us back to the fire that erupted at dawn. Russian officials claimed it was just a repair accident, but witnesses described a sound like artillery, a strong chemical smell drifting across their villages, and emergency crews scrambling with almost no coordination. This wasn't an accident. This was neglect. Years of ignored maintenance, years of corruption in state-run energy companies, years of pretending everything was fine while pipelines rusted quietly underground. And this matters because the Russian military relies on these very pipelines, substations, refineries, and transport lines to fuel every tank, every truck, every missile launcher. One broken pipe becomes one broken convoy. One failed substation becomes one silent factory. One fire becomes a chain reaction inside a system already stretched to breaking. Meanwhile, in the occupied Donbass, the Kremlin's promises collapse under their own weight. Moscow keeps calling this region Russia, but the border still behaves like a border. Civilians queue for hours trying to leave, even though propaganda insists they should feel safe under Russian control. But they don't. They see Ukrainian FPV drones hitting energy infrastructure. They see the Subskaya power plant in ruins. They hear the explosions, the drone buzzes overhead, the transformers burning in the night. Ukraine isn't just fighting on the front line anymore. Ukraine is fighting the entire length of Russia's operational depth. And it's working. Every power plant hit forces Russia to reroute electricity. Every transformer destroyed forces technicians to improvise. Every substation damaged creates a ripple across Moscow's industrial heart. The 500 kilovolt Vesa substation in Ulyanovsk proved that perfectly. One strike, one substation, and suddenly Russia's central industrial belt lost one of its main corridors for power distribution. This wasn't random, it was strategic. By reducing redundancy in the grid, Ukraine forces power to flow through fewer routes. Those routes overload, equipment fails, and the factories that build Russia's ammunition, drones, and armored vehicles suffer delays. Wartime output slows, repair cycles lengthen, and the army at the front line waits for supplies that may never arrive. But nowhere is this collapse clearer than in the Kupiansk-Svatove front. Ukrainian units, airborne brigades, artillery teams, drone operators are systematically carving up Russian movements. Russian sabotage groups are being eliminated, assault vehicles are burned out on forest roads. Infantry are caught in open fields by drones they never hear coming. The 77th Air Mobile Brigade recently destroyed a full Russian assault column. And that wasn't luck. It was GPS-guided surveillance. It was coordinated drone reconnaissance. It was artillery batteries firing with precision that Russia has failed to match since the early months of the war. And Russia knows it. They no longer rely on military transport because too many were destroyed. Instead, they cram soldiers into civilian vans, pickup trucks, even old Ladas, turning every movement into a visible target. Every time they move, something gets hit. A transport vehicle, a logistics truck, a fuel carrier, and once something burns, the entire line slows, leaving more targets for Ukrainian drones circling overhead. Further south, near the Dogria-Kostyanka highway, Russian forces tried a local assault, probably intended as a small morale victory. Instead, it became a graveyard of scorched vehicles. Trucks burned on the roadside, infantry scattered before being hit by artillery. National Guard units sealed off the area and pushed them back within hours. These losses aren't dramatic in isolation, but added together, they tell a different story. Russia is losing the ability to move, to resupply, to rotate troops, to advance. Every failed attack shrinks their options. Every destroyed vehicle limits their future operations. And every day, Ukraine becomes more efficient at dismantling the entire Russian playbook. In areas like Novopokrovka, Ukrainian forces have shifted into a new approach, one that Russia is not equipped to counter. They perform coordinated clearing operations, use FPV drones as interceptors, destroy Russian UAVs mid-flight, and strike Russian firing points using ground-based kamikaze platforms. Even Russian Zala and Lancet drones, once considered major threats, are being hunted down. Russian soldiers now get tangled in fiber-optic drone cables because they don't know how to counter these new systems. And when they panic and disperse, Ukrainian FPVs pick them off one by one. In the south, Ukrainian reconnaissance groups discovered Russian shelters near the Dnipro. Minutes later, Orion units destroyed them with drone-guided fire. No build-up, no trenches, no chance to escape. This is what modern war looks like when one side innovates and the other side stagnates. Ukraine now fields interceptor drones like the Sting, capable of achieving a 50% kill rate against Shahed drones even during early testing. And they're not stopping there. Terminal phase automation, the moment a drone locks onto a target and finishes the attack without human control, is almost ready. Once that arrives, Russian drones become obsolete overnight. But Ukraine isn't relying only on drones. Engineers unveiled the Flamingo cruise missile, funded partly by Czech initiatives. Modular design, long-range capability, domestic production, and the involvement of figures like Mike Pompeo signal something bigger. Ukraine is building a defense industry built to last. NVIDIA's partnership goes even further. AI-driven FPV training, real-time battlefield simulations, secure AI model development. These tools allow Ukraine to update tactics weekly, sometimes daily, matching Russian moves before Russian commanders even understand what happened. Meanwhile, Russia keeps relying on the same outdated doctrine, hoping numbers will compensate for innovation. But numbers are exactly what they are losing. Even in the air defense space, Ukraine is rewriting the rules. The Octopus interceptor drone, now in serial production, costs around 1/10 of a traditional missile. That means Ukraine can intercept large Shahed salvos cheaply, saving expensive air defense systems for more critical threats. With the Sting, the Octopus, and long-range Flamingo missiles, Ukraine now has asymmetric dominance in detection, interception, and long-range precision. But if you really want to understand why Moscow is panicking, look at Russia's economy. At the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk, Urals crude oil now sells for just $36 a barrel, the lowest level since March 2023, a discount of $23 from Brent. US sanctions are tightening, Asian buyers are paying less, transport risks are rising, insurance premiums are going up, and the Kremlin's war economy is bleeding from every direction. When oil revenue collapses, everything collapses with it. Military budgets, social programs, wages, procurement, logistics. That's why half of Russia's clothing and shoe stores have closed. That's why consumer spending is down. That's why analysts suspect Russia is already in a recession, even if Moscow refuses to admit it. Inflation is rising, import shortages are worsening. The ruble is weakening, families can't afford basic necessities anymore. And with every month of war, the economic hole gets deeper. This is why Russia is failing, not because of one defeat, but because everything is cracking at once. The battlefield, the energy grid, the logistics network, the industrial sector, the economy. And even the morale of soldiers who now ride to the front in broken civilian vehicles on one-way trips. Ukraine isn't just defending territory anymore. Ukraine is shaping the battlefield, shaping the supply lines, shaping the technology race, and shaping the economic pressure that now threatens the Kremlin itself. Every strike on a substation weakens Russia's industrial output. Every destroyed convoy slows their ability to reinforce. Every intercept of a drone proves Russia is no longer the technological leader it once claimed to be. And every day, Ukraine grows stronger while Russia becomes more desperate. The truth is simple. This war is no longer just about guns and soldiers. It is a test of logistics, a test of innovation, a test of endurance. And on all three fronts, Ukraine is pulling ahead. Russia's ability to continue aggressive operations is shrinking. Its capacity to sustain long campaigns is fading, and the balance of power on the ground is shifting, not by chance, but by design. Ukraine is dismantling Russia piece by piece, not just at the front, but deep inside the systems that once kept Moscow's war machine alive. And unless something changes dramatically, this collapse is only beginning. Before you go, remember, we're completely independent. No big networks, no sponsors, and no government influence. In a world full of corruption and scripted news, your support keeps real journalism alive. So please like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps.